Alright, so as I'm reading through, you might want to pause it and stop it if you need. You should be on page 9 in your workbook. At the top it says case study number 2, Opium Wars and Chinese Imperialism, so we'll be focusing on Chinese imperialism. The Opium War was the most humiliating defeat China ever suffered. The Opium Wars were a conflict between Britain and China lasting from 1839 to 1842 over Britain's opium trade in China. So I want you to read through these paragraphs from the Opium War all the way down to close down the opium dens, and then after you should feel good enough to answer these 2 questions. The first one asks you, why was England considered a major drug dealer during this time period? So look back at the reading, and if you have any prior knowledge from last year, think about why England was selling this to China. What would the advantage for them be? And there has to be something. The second one says, what outcome did the smuggling of opium have on the Chinese? And that's listed above as well. It talks about there's a few different parts it says. Devastating, here I see, so you might want to look there. It says pure human misery and tragedy. It says criminal activity, so those are a few places you might want to look and give some pieces of evidence for the second question. Then as you continue down, I will read that with you, so you might want to stop right here and then pause it, and then we'll get going once you're done with those 2 questions. So, the Opium Wars arose from China's attempts to suppress the opium trade. British traders had been illegally exporting opium to China, and the resulting widespread addiction was causing serious social and economic disruption in the country. In 1839, the Chinese government confiscated all opium warehoused at the city of Canton in China by British merchants. The antagonism between the 2 sides increased a few days later when some drunken British sailors killed a Chinese villager. The British government, which did not trust the Chinese legal system, refused to turn the accused men over to the Chinese courts. Although this was a low-level conflict, it inspired the English to send warships in June of 1840. So as I'm underlining and going over this, I want you to as well, so make sure you're doing that in your workbook. The Chinese, with old-style weapons and artillery, were no match for the British gunships, which ranged up and down the coast shooting at forts and fighting on land. The Chinese were equally unprepared for the technological superiority of the British land armies. So they did not have the advancements that the British did, and suffered continual defeats. Finally, in 1842, the Chinese were forced to agree to an unfair peace under the treaty. Explain the reasons the Chinese lost to the British in the Opium War. So there's a few things that we just talked about, so this is a good point for you to pause the video and look back and take some of the things that we highlighted and consider that. So the reasons the Chinese lost to the British in the Opium War, those should all be negative reasons why they weren't able to excel against the British. Alright, so once you have completed that first page that says case study 2 at the top, I want you to flip to the next page. It starts with the treaty imposed on the Chinese was weighted entirely to the British side. You can see that on the left-hand side of the screen. This is where I just read from the treaty imposed. I want you to read through all of the notes on this page as well as the one next to it with the rebellion beginning. And you need to read through carefully because the questions will be directly from those readings. So all of these questions should be filled in on both of these pages when you come in. It's fairly simple. All you're doing is reading through and then answering the questions. This might be a good time to stop and get those 2 pages done, and then I'll give you directions for the next 2 pages. On this page, this is page 12, same thing. It's titled Chinese Fail to Resist Foreign Influence. So the first question, how did the Chinese view foreigners? Think back to Global 9, why did they view them this way? You can use what you just read or prior knowledge for those two. And then what problems were facing China in the mid-1800s that caused them to not be able to resist foreign influence? So that's a higher level thinking question. Push yourselves. What can you think about? What caused them to not be able to resist foreign influence? So why was foreign influence inevitable for China? All right, and then at the bottom of the screen you see a map, and we've done these a few times for a quick visual. I do not care about your artistic abilities, but the general image to see what the main ideas are from the colors. I want you to look at this map, so you might want to pause it when I'm on the map. This is what you will be using to complete that. So you can pause here, color that in, and then return back, and this is the last page. All I want you to do on this page is read through each of these and then answer just the sum it up at the bottom, and we will have an activity in class where you go through all of this left hand column over here. So you should have in total, you're going to complete let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages of notes, and all it is reading and answering the questions. And here's that map again in case you need it. If you need any help, email myself. If you cannot complete it for any reason, email myself so that I know, and I'm going to do a homework check right when you walk in the door.